The weight vanished. Not the physical weight of the small, intricately carved box, but the weight of generations, of memory, of my grandmother's hands placing it in my mother's, and then into mine. It was gone. The empty space on the velvet stand in my dressing room mirrored the sudden, gaping hole in my chest. The air felt thin, cold, impossible to breathe. He stood there, in the doorway, looking anywhere but at me. His face a mask I didn't recognize. Guilt? Defiance? Just emptiness? It was my husband, Leo, and beside him my sister, Clara. Her smile was small, tight, like a secret she couldn't quite keep contained. The box wasn't with her. It was just gone. Between them. Given. Without a word to me. Without a moment's hesitation. Like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. My life before that moment felt solid. Built on foundations that seemed unshakable. I had my home, warm and filled with quiet routines. I had Leo, my husband of 10 years, the man I trusted with my present and my future. We weren't perfect, no one is, but we had a comfortable rhythm, a shared history. And I had Clara, my sister, my only sibling. There was the usual sisterly push and pull, a little rivalry sometimes, but beneath it, I believed, was an unbreakable bond. Family was everything to me. It was the bedrock. And then there was the brooch. It wasn't just an object. It was a piece of our lineage, passed down through the women in our family for over 150 years. It was large, an oval of deep sapphire surrounded by a halo of small, brilliant diamonds set in heavy, aged gold. The gold itself felt alive with the touch of all the hands that had held it, pinned it, treasured it. My great-great-grandmother wore it on her wedding day, a beacon of hope on a journey to a new country. My grandmother wore it pinned to her nursing uniform during the war, a tiny piece of beauty and history in a world falling apart. My mother wore it when she held me for the first time. When she passed it to me on my 30th birthday, her eyes were glistening. She told me it carried the strength of every woman who had worn it before. It wasn't insured for its market value because no insurance company could possibly put a price on what it meant. It was priceless. It wasn't just mine, it was ours. It belonged to the line, to the future. It was meant for my daughter, or niece, or whoever carried the torch next. My life felt anchored by these things. Love, family, history. The days were filled with work. I'd built a successful business, quietly, steadily, over the years, in an industry Leo and Clara barely understood. It gave me independence, security, a sense of accomplishment that was purely my own. I didn't talk about it much. Leo handled our joint finances, and I kept my business account separate, just for clarity, or maybe a quiet sense of self-reliance. It felt responsible. Safe. Clara had a different path. She struggled more, always seeming to be chasing something just out of reach. Money was often tight for her. She worked hard, but success seemed to elude her. I'd helped her out over the years. Little loans that were never quite repaid, support when she needed it. Because she was my sister. Family helps family. It was just what you did. I never resented it. I just wished things were easier for her. Maybe that was part of the quiet joy of my own success, the knowledge that I could help, that I had that buffer. Leo knew the brooch's significance. He'd seen my mother give it to me. He'd heard the stories. He knew it was the one irreplaceable thing I owned, not because of its monetary value, although that was substantial, but because it was the thread connecting me to every woman who had come before me. It was my heritage. He knew. He stood there, and the silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Clara's small smile widened just a fraction. It wasn't warm. It was triumphant. "Leo," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Where is it?" He finally looked at me, his gaze flickering away almost immediately. "I gave it to Clara," he mumbled. His words were flat, devoid of emotion, as if he were announcing he'd given her an old sweater. My sister stepped slightly forward. "I needed it," she said. Her voice was firm, matter of fact. Needed it? Needed a priceless family heirloom? The world tilted. It wasn't just that he had given it away without asking. It was who he had given it to. My sister. The one person I believed understood its value, its history, its sacred place in our family line, second only to me. Needed it for what? I managed. The cold in my chest was spreading, a physical pain. For a down payment, Clara said. I'm getting an apartment. I needed the money. She intended to sell it. The blood drained from my face. Sell the brooch. Sell the history. Sell the memory. Sell the link to our past. It wasn't just gone. It was about to be annihilated. For an apartment down payment. You can't, I stammered. It's not yours to sell. It's family. Clara shrugged, a small, dismissive movement that felt like a slap. It's valuable. I need the money now. And Leo said it was okay. Leo said it was okay. He, my husband, had given away the one thing I cherished above all others, not to pawn or sell himself, but to give to my sister, knowing she would sell it, essentially facilitating the destruction of my heritage. He had betrayed me. With my sister. The two people closest to me in the world. Hand in hand. The shock was a physical blow. I staggered back, hitting the dressing table. Bottles clattered. My reflection stared back at me, pale, eyes wide with disbelief and pain. I looked like a stranger. How could you? I whispered, looking at Leo. How could you do this? He still wouldn't look at me properly. You have lots of other things, he said, his voice low, defensive. It's just a piece of jewelry. Just a piece of jewelry. Those words were like shards of glass. He didn't understand. He had never understood. Or maybe he understood perfectly, and just didn't care. My sister stood there, watching me, her face unreadable now, the faint triumph replaced by something harder, colder. I started pleading. Not for the money, not for retribution, but for the history. For them to understand what they had done. Clara, please, I begged. It's Mom's. It's Grandma's. It's meant for the future. We can find another way. I can help you with the down payment. Just don't sell that. Clara shook her head. It's done, she said flatly. I already made arrangements. Arrangements? They had planned this. Behind my back. My husband and my sister. They had conspired to take the most meaningful object I owned and turn it into cash. The betrayal went deeper than just the loss of the brooch. It was the violation of my trust, the shattering of my sense of safety within my own home, with my own family. I turned back to Leo. Did you know she was going to sell it? My voice was dangerously quiet now. He hesitated, then nodded. She needed it. It was the easiest way. The easiest way. To destroy something priceless. To break me. That night, the house was a tomb. Leo and I didn't speak. He stayed in the living room. I locked myself in the bedroom. Sleep was impossible. My mind replayed the scene, twisting and turning. Needed it? What kind of need justified this? Had they calculated its market value? Did they know how much it was worth in dollars? Or did they only see it as a means to an end, blind to its true worth? The thought that they might simply be callous, rather than malicious, was almost worse. It implied a fundamental lack of respect for me, for our history, for everything I held sacred. The next few days were a blur of raw pain and disbelief. I confronted them repeatedly, separately, and together. Leo was evasive, defensive. He kept repeating that it was just a thing, and I was being overly emotional. He accused me of caring more about an object than my sister's well-being. My sister was harder, more direct. She admitted she needed the money. When I offered to give her the money if she'd just give the brooch back, she said it was too late, the deal was done. She needed the cash immediately. It was like talking to people I didn't know. Their faces were familiar, but their eyes were cold, calculating. Every corner of the house felt tainted. Leo's presence felt like a constant reminder of the betrayal. My sister wouldn't answer my calls or texts asking for details for a last-ditch chance to buy it back before she sold it to a stranger. The silence from her end was damning. She wasn't just selling it. She was cutting me off. I reached out to a lawyer friend, tentatively asking about retrieving property given away by a spouse. The answers weren't encouraging. If Leo had the legal right to access my belongings in the house, and if he gifted it freely, retrieval could be complex, lengthy, and public. Did I want to sue my husband and my sister? The thought sickened me. It wasn't about the money, I kept telling myself. But the lawyer asked about value, about proof of ownership, about where the funds for it came from. It felt transactional, cold, like reducing history to a line item. I recoiled from the idea. My attempts to appeal to their sense of family, history, or even basic human decency failed completely. They seemed to have erected a wall around themselves. They were in it together now. It felt like they had bonded over my loss, over the act of taking from me. The marriage was unraveling at terrifying speed. Every look, every silence, every forced politeness was a fresh wound. Clara's apartment purchase seemed to be going through quickly, adding urgency to my despair. The brooch was slipping away, faster than I could grasp. I found myself wandering through the house, touching the places where I'd kept the brooch, tracing the outline of the box on the velvet. It felt like a phantom limb, a constant ache for something that was physically gone but emotionally still acutely present. My focus at work suffered. I felt numb, disconnected from everything that had once mattered. Sleep offered no escape, only restless tossing and turning, haunted by images of the brooch in a stranger's hands, its story erased. Then came the day Clara confirmed it was sold. A curt text message. "It's done. Got the money. Thanks. For what? For letting her steal my heritage?" The casual cruelty of it hollowed me out further. The last thread of hope, the possibility of buying it back, snapped. It was truly gone. Lost forever to a transaction. The depth of the betrayal settled over me like a shroud. It wasn't just about the brooch anymore. It was about their characters, about who they truly were beneath the veneer of family and love. They had seen something valuable, something that meant the world to me, and they had taken it for their own gain. And my husband had facilitated it. He had chosen her, chosen the transaction, over me, over our shared past, over my deepest feelings. The silence between Leo and me became a physical weight in the house. We moved through our routines like ghosts. The warmth that had once defined our home was replaced by a chilling emptiness. Eating dinner together was an exercise in endurance, every uneaten bite a testament to the things left unsaid, the trust irrevocably broken. I looked at him across the table, the man whose hand I had held for a decade, and saw a stranger, a betrayer, someone who had actively participated in hurting me in the most profound way. I started sleeping in the guest room. The separation felt final, a physical manifestation of the chasm that had opened between us. The house, once our sanctuary, felt like a prison. Every object, every shared memory, seemed to mock me, reminding me of what was lost. My sister's name was like ash in my mouth. The woman who had been my confidant, my childhood playmate, my only sibling, had stabbed me in the back and walked away without a backward glance, apparently pleased with her profit. I considered leaving, just walking out and starting over. But the thought of giving them the satisfaction, of letting them break me completely and scattering the pieces, felt like another betrayal, this time of myself. I had built my life, my business, my independence, quietly, brick by brick. I had resources they didn't know about. I had resilience they hadn't accounted for. The shift wasn't sudden, but gradual, like the turning of a massive ship. The tears stopped. The raw, bleeding wound began to scar over, the tissue hard and unfeeling. Despair gave way to a cold, quiet anger. An anger so profound it didn't rage. It settled deep within my bones, a permanent chill. I stopped trying to understand why they had done it in terms of emotional betrayal. I started thinking about why in terms of motive, calculation. My sister needed money. Lots of it, it seemed, for this apartment. My husband went along with it. Was he involved in the money? Did he get a cut? Was he trying to solve a problem for her? Maybe a problem he felt responsible for? Or did he simply see an opportunity, something valuable I had that could be liquidated. My business required discretion, knowledge of finances, understanding how things worked beneath the surface. I was good at it. I saw patterns others missed. I started looking at Leo's behavior not through the lens of a hurt wife, but as a problem to be analyzed. His evasiveness, his sudden concern for Clara's finances, his willingness to brush aside my feelings as emotional. It wasn't just callousness. It felt strategic. I started looking into things. Quietly. Legally. Public records. Financial filings. Not related to the brooch, but to their lives, their activities. My sister's new apartment. The value seemed high for what she claimed to afford. Where was the rest of the money coming from? Leo's own financial situation. Had he been in trouble? Was he trying to help her out of something, perhaps something he had gotten her into? My mind, which had been consumed by grief, now sharpened, focused by this new, cold determination. The victimhood was draining. Analysis felt empowering. The more I looked, the more a picture began to form, murky at first, then terrifyingly clear. Not a sudden revelation, but pieces slotting into place. Financial pressures. Debts. A desperation that I hadn't seen, or perhaps had willfully ignored. Their casual cruelty wasn't just disregard. It might have been born of a desperate need, a need that blinded them to everything else, including my feelings, my history, my rights. They had taken the brooch because they saw it as a $500,000 solution to a pressing problem. They weren't just thieves of sentiment. They were potentially covering something up, something big enough to justify this level of betrayal. My husband and my sister. In it together. I realized then that fighting them head-on, begging for the brooch back, trying to appeal to their non-existent consciences, was pointless. They had crossed a line I couldn't uncross with tears or logic. The only way forward wasn't through emotional appeals, but through something they might actually understand. Consequence. Power. I stopped talking about the brooch entirely. I stopped asking Leo about Clara. The silence in the house changed. It wasn't filled with pain anymore, but with a quiet resolve that must have felt unsettling to him. I focused on my work, pouring every ounce of energy into it. I expanded my business, closed deals I'd been hesitant about before, consolidated my resources. My net worth, which had been substantial but something I kept private, grew significantly. I built a fortress around myself, not just emotionally, but financially. They wanted to reduce me to someone they could easily discard and steal from. They wouldn't get the chance. I prepared. Not for a fight over a brooch, but for a war for my life, my dignity, my future. The cold anger became a fuel. I didn't plot revenge in the dramatic sense. I plotted resilience. Strength. Building my own world so solid that their betrayal couldn't touch the core of me. I wouldn't sue for the brooch. I would build a life where the loss of $500,000 was something I could absorb without blinking. The house remained a battleground of silence and coldness. Leo seemed wary, unsure of how to navigate my quiet transformation. He tried tentative overtures, small talk, bringing up old memories, trying to recapture something that was irrevocably lost. I responded politely, distantly. The connection was severed. I was just waiting now. Waiting for something. The legal complexities of retrieving the brooch were still daunting. The cost felt too high. But the knowledge of my own growing strength, my untouchable resources, became my armor. They thought they had taken something irreplaceable and left me vulnerable. They had no idea. The sister who had once shared a bedroom with me, whispered secrets with me in the dark, braided my hair, now existed on the periphery of my life, a painful ghost. I heard snippets through mutual acquaintances. She was settled in her new apartment, seemed happy. I felt nothing. The sister I knew was dead to me, replaced by a stranger who valued money over blood, history, and trust. The climax didn't arrive with a bang, but a hesitant knock. Weeks, maybe months, had passed since the brooch was sold. The pain had dulled into a chronic ache, the anger a steady simmer. I was working from my home office, immersed in spreadsheets and contracts, the quiet hum of my computer the only sound in the house that felt safe. The knock came late one afternoon. Unexpected. Leo was out. I answered the door, expecting a delivery, or perhaps a neighbor. It was Clara. She stood on my porch, shifting her weight, her eyes avoiding mine. She looked smaller than I remembered.
Drawn.
In her hands, she held a box. Not the small, carved box the brooch had originally been in, but a plain, standard jewelry box. My heart leaped, a sudden, violent flutter against my ribs. Impossible. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice low. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed no. But the box. I stepped aside, my gaze fixed on it. She walked into the entryway, not going further into the house. She held the box out to me. "Here," she said, her voice barely a whisper. My hands trembled as I took it. It felt heavy.
Real.
I opened the lid. There it was.
The brooch.
Nestled on plain white cotton, not the familiar velvet. The sapphire seemed to glow in the dim light of the hallway. The diamonds sparkled. It was real. It was back. My breath hitched. Relief, so potent it was almost nauseating, flooded through me. But it was quickly followed by a wave of confusion and suspicion.
Why? Why now?
After selling it, Clara still wouldn't look at me. Her gaze was fixed on the floor. I got it back," she mumbled.
How?
I asked, my voice flat. The emotional turmoil was overwhelming, but I kept my face a mask. She hesitated, then finally met my eyes. There was no triumph now, no coldness, just shame, something else, resignation. "The buyer," she started, then stopped. She took a shaky breath. "The buyer, he's a collector. He knows value. He had it appraised. He knows what it's really worth." My jaw tightened. Did she think I didn't know its market value? Was this about money after all? She rushed on, the words tumbling out as if she needed to get rid of them. He started asking questions. About the provenance. Where it came from. Who owned it before me. She had claimed it was hers. That it had been in her family. The lie was catching up to her. "He did some checking," she continued, her voice cracking slightly. "He's thorough.
He found out about Mom.
About Grandma.
About the history.
About you." She trailed off, but the implication hung in the air, heavy and sharp.
He found out about me.
My history with the brooch. My claim to it. My family. But that wasn't the twist. That was just getting caught in a lie. The real reason for her return, the thing that blindsided her and brought the brooch back to me, was something she said next.
He found out about
everything, she whispered. About your business. Your success. Your net worth. She finally looked me in the eye, and in her gaze I saw it. The shock. The realization. The dawning horror that the person she had stolen from, the sister she had dismissed as overly emotional and easily hurt, wasn't just the woman who loved an old piece of jewelry. I was also the woman who had built an empire, quietly, privately. I was formidable. My resources weren't just sentimental, they were vast. The buyer, a shrewd collector concerned about title and provenance, likely saw the risk. Buying a $500,000 heirloom from someone who obtained it questionably, when the rightful owner had the means and the will to pursue it, wasn't worth the trouble. He had probably threatened to expose her, or perhaps simply returned it and demanded his money back, unwilling to get involved in a messy family dispute with a very wealthy victim. Clara had taken the brooch because she saw a $500,000 asset she could easily liquidate from a sister she believed was vulnerable, someone she could betray with Leo's help and face no real consequences from, other than emotional ones I wouldn't pursue legally. She thought she was stealing from someone who couldn't truly afford the loss, who would be devastated but ultimately powerless to reclaim it, especially after she'd sold it to a third party. She hadn't just stolen the brooch. She had miscalculated me. My quiet success, the financial fortress I had built, not with the intention of fighting her, but simply for my own security, became the very thing that forced her hand. She didn't return the brooch because of a sudden pang of conscience, or remorse over breaking our family bond. She returned it because she realized the sister she had betrayed was not the pushover she thought, and that keeping the brooch carried a greater risk than the money was worth. My strength, my resilience, my hidden net worth, they were the weapons I didn't even have to fire. They simply existed, and their existence protected me. She had stolen a priceless heirloom from her sister and husband, thinking it was easy money from someone who wouldn't or couldn't fight back effectively. She discovered she had stolen from someone who could buy and sell the buyer, her new apartment, and probably Leo's entire career without batting an eye. That's what blindsided her. That's how I won bigger. Not by getting the brooch back, but by realizing my own power, the power she never saw, the power that ultimately protected my most precious possession. The brooch wasn't retrieved by begging or legal battles. It was retrieved by the sheer weight of my unanticipated reality. She stood there, stripped bare. The shame on her face wasn't just about getting caught. It was the shame of realizing she had fundamentally misunderstood and underestimated me. She had risked everything, our relationship, her integrity, for what she thought was an easy win, only to discover her opponent was operating on a different level entirely. The $500,000 meant less than the potential exposure, the legal fight she knew she would lose, the public humiliation. My quiet strength had turned her victory into a liability. I needed the money, she repeated, a lame excuse now. Things have been hard. I looked down at the brooch, then back at her. The raw pain was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. There was no anger left, just a vast, aching sadness for the sister I had lost long before she ever took the brooch. And beneath that, a steel-cold satisfaction. She hadn't just lost the brooch, she had lost me. And she knew, in that moment, that my loss was far greater than hers could ever be. Not in monetary terms, but in the quiet, unshakable strength I had found, the strength that made her petty betrayal seem small, almost pathetic, in comparison. "Get out," I said, my voice steady, devoid of emotion. She flinched as if I had struck her.
She didn't argue.
She just turned and walked out, leaving me alone in the hallway with the brooch. Holding the brooch again felt strange. It was heavier than I remembered, or maybe the weight was the burden of everything that had happened. It was mine again, but the history felt fractured, tainted. It was still beautiful, still carried the faint energy of the women who wore it. But now it also carried the ugly stain of betrayal, of calculation, of a sister and a husband who were willing to sell my past for their present convenience. I didn't confront Leo. He came home later that evening. He saw the brooch on the table.
He looked at me.
The words didn't need to be spoken. He knew Clara had returned it. He knew why. The same realization. Must have hit him too. The wife they had conspired against wasn't weak or dependent. She was the rock they had tried to break themselves against. The marriage didn't survive. There was no dramatic fight, just a quiet, mutual acknowledgement that something fundamental had been destroyed. He moved out eventually. There was no point in salvage. The trust was gone. My sister. I haven't spoken to her since that day. The silence isn't angry. It's just empty. She chose her path, and it led her away from me. The bond isn't broken. It's simply evaporated, leaving behind a hollow space where a sister used to be. The brooch sits on its velvet stand again. Sometimes I pick it up. It's still beautiful. It still whispers stories of the women before me. But now it also tells a new story. A story of betrayal, of loss, and of finding a strength I didn't know I possessed, a strength that exists independently of family, of marriage, of possessions. A strength built on quiet resilience, foresight, and the cold, hard truth that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones most capable of hurting you. But also, that their perception of you doesn't define your reality. My reality is mine alone, built on foundations they never saw, foundations they couldn't shake. The brooch is back, but the real treasure I reclaimed was myself. Stronger, harder, and with a clearer vision of who to trust. And who never, ever to underestimate. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.